Welcome to Chocobo Chasers. I am G, and as always, I am joined by my Chocobros, Eric and Dash. We are joined tonight by a very special guest, Abby the Oboist. You may have seen some of her covers on Twitter, ranging from Animal Crossing to Zelda to Final Fantasy, so many others. Bringing an instrument like the oboe to the forefront, which I feel like doesn't really get the spotlight it deserves, and Abby's absolutely crushing it. So be sure to follow her on Twitter or X, whatever you want to refer to it as at Abby the Oboist. We'll be sure to make sure to tag her social so that you can be able to go ahead and follow her. Abby, it's awesome to have you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk with all y'all.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome time. So let's go ahead and let's just dive right into it. So, one, how long have you been playing?
So I've been playing the oboe for about 12 or 13 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
started, I think, when I was like 12 years old and I'm 25. So,
Holy cow.
kind of rough start-ish. I don't re remember exactly when, but I was around 12 years old.
That's awesome. And what made you, I guess, start playing the oboe, but what also made you want to start sharing? And, you've kind of jumped into the content creator scene now as almost like you're your person of influence on Twitter or X right now.
So it's funny, the reason I started playing the oboe, I actually started, my first instrument was actually the clarinet. I
Okay.
started playing clarinet when I was 8 years old. And I have an older sister who's 4 years older than me. And so when she was a junior in high school, she was like in her band program and everything. Her band director had her switch to oboe. And in my little 12-year-old brain, I was like, I could switch to oboe too and be like better than her. So like I'm gonna do that. I I was a middle sibling for a pretty long time, and I feel like that little story kind of really shows that I have middle child energy, especially when I was younger. So that's the reason why I switched to the oboe, to be honest. It was pretty much just I'm a child and I have this feeling of I want to be better than an older sibling at something. But the reason I started sharing my content online, I actually started posting online back in like 2020, 2021. I'd say I seriously started posting in 2021 on YouTube and then TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, etc. And the main reason why is because I graduated college in 2020, spring 2020. So my last semester of my senior year was like cut in half of like normal classes and then Zoom, COVID, everything, all that stuff.
Right.
And with music specifically, it was a really, really weird time of like, if playing in ensembles becomes normal again, who knows when that will be and where I will be in my life of
Yeah.
like, you know, will I be in a workplace where I can leave work at a certain time to make rehearsal at 6 p.m. or that just those basic logistics that I'm not a student anymore. It's not built into my daily schedule. And how am I going to make time to keep myself playing? And so it was like, well, if I just have to be in my apartment with my computer in my oboe, then I can play whenever I want, essentially. Obviously, within the parameters of living in an apartment complex.
Right.
But yeah, I figured it was the best way I would be able to keep myself playing after college, because I do, funny enough, I don't have the strongest love for like traditional classical music. So I was like, I don't have a strong interest to do like all the orchestral auditions or to get a master's in music. I want to just like play what I find fun, and that happens to be video game music. So
Love that. Eric, why don't you go ahead and follow that up?
So I'm going to put you on the spot and make you give us your favorite video game soundtrack of all time. Number one.
I'm going
So,
to have to say Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy X is an extremely close second. But I think if we're going like track by track, Final Fantasy IX has more hits for me.
You just struck a string
my
in
yeah,
Dash's
my
heart because he loves Final Fantasy IX so much.
You mean Final Fantasy 10?
I'm yeah,
I know
I
you like
love
9 too, Dash. Don't lie to me.
I'm the nine person.
Dash. Dash likes 9. I'm like 10 a little bit,
I'm
but
shocked by your poster in the background.
uh, Dash, why don't you go ahead and go
All
next,
right.
man?
What was the most challenging song you ever had to try covering?
Um,
if there was one, at least, I guess.
I guess I feel like with covering video game music, I feel like the hardest part is that, like, as y'all kind of mentioned when you were introing me in, is that oboe is featured in a lot of soundtracks, but a lot of soundtracks, especially over the last several years, have kind of like shifted to more either like more of a retro vibe, like going back to chiptune, or just an overall electronic vibe. So that has definitely made it harder to like make it seem like oboe fits this music.
Yeah.
I feel like when I feel like some of the hardest music I have like a difficult time like kind of getting to work for me is things like Undertale music. Like
Mm.
I have a cover of Megalovania, and back when I did that arrangement, I did a lot of like chiptune background tracks. And as I've done more Undertale covers, I'm like, no, I can't have that be my background track. It sounds too weird with the oboe, I think. So now when I've done Undertale or Deltarune covers, I've done like piano background music, so it kind of like softens it a little bit, and oboe kind of fits in a little bit smoother. So I feel like that can be some of the hardest music to like get to work for the oboe. But with technically playing, I feel like with my background of being a classical musician, of like I took private lessons from when I started oboe until I graduated college. Honestly, I've played some pretty hard stuff, and I really learned like, okay, this is how you practice. This is how you do the building blocks so that playing stuff like video game music is relatively easy. Um, so I guess it's kind of like two different answers, but I feel like for me, the more chiptune music is the hardest to make sound best with the oboe.
And with moments like that, are you kind of finding sheets online, or do you have to come up with them on your own kind of sometimes?
So I kind of do a little bit of a mix of I really love using sources like Sheet music. That's been around, I feel like, forever. I remember finding it back in like early high school and being like, oh my gosh, there's so much sheet music here. And then also I use the website MuseScore a lot. That's also the notation software I use. I use MuseScore as well. But I have to kind of like Frankenstein anything I find to have the oboe be the melody line. And thankfully, a lot of programs will just transpose for you. So if the melody is naturally in the B flat clarinet, it will transpose up to C when I like change the parts around. And then especially music that I know very well, like Final Fantasy, I can tell like if someone got like a chord wrong or a melody incorrect or a rhythm incorrect, I'm like, oh wait, I need to fix that. So I do some editing myself too when needed. But I feel like at this point, with how big the music world is and how big the video game world is, that um, it is relatively easy to find really good sources online.
How long does it take for you to get it all put together?
Um, well, what I do, I will like I'll spend an evening just like um working on arrangements, and I'll like essentially get a whole batch done. So I'll have like between like 5 to 10 pieces where it's like, okay, now I just need to sit down and record it. And then a few days later, I'll sit down and record everything. And then a few days later, I will batch film everything. So I try to do like multiple like covers at once essentially, just to maximize my time and to just maximize like the flow of content I have going. I feel like at this point I've like figured out my groove of like my process of being able to produce content pretty regularly.
Really. Uh, Eric, why don't you go ahead and follow that up?
So you post a ton of Zelda covers.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna guess you're a
Eric,
fan of the series.
Yes, I am.
So I want to know which Zelda game is your favorite, and is that game exclusive with like your favorite soundtrack? Do you like one soundtrack more than another, but you like the game more than these other ones?
I feel like Ocarina of Time is my favorite. I know it's like super basic, but I feel like it's basic for a reason. Like if it's a good game, it's a good game.
Yeah.
And I also feel like just like what it did for video games, even though it's crazy because the original Ocarina of Time came out like I think the year I was born, like 1998. But
I,
um,
I was playing it, watching my brother play it. I was like,
yeah.
man, this is third grade.
But it's something that like even so I didn't play the original in 64. I actually played it when it was remastered for the 3DS.
Okay.
But I just really like the story. I liked, the development and the themes that it brings up. And also the music, I feel like Ocarina of Time brought a lot of like really classic songs into the series and also continued a lot of classic tracks from previous games that kept it in, like Kakariko Village and things like that. Um, so yeah, it's actually funny on TikTok, where that's where I first like kind of like blew up online. I My first cover that did really well was the Ocarina of Time title theme. So that's why I have so many Zelda covers because like on TikTok I became known as like the oboe Zelda girl. So when I started posting on Twitter, I was like, I got this huge backlog of Zelda covers.
That's awesome. Dash, you wanna go next, man?
Sorry, I keep muting myself because I'm
No,
coughing
you're
and I don't
okay.
want. All right. Video game soundtracks are one of the most essential elements of a video game. With so many games having songs that kind of define their identity in some parts, what do you think is the most important part of the music that music is for games? I guess.
I feel like similar to movies and TV shows where it's like I'm sure y'all have seen the videos online, especially like older YouTube where it's like, oh, changing a scene from like that had serious music and putting like silly background music and then like totally changes the tone of it and make a drama seem like a comedy or a comedy seem like a horror show. I feel like it can be really similar with video games where I feel like any type of visual media, the music can help really reinforce the message or the emotions that the scene is trying to evoke for the player. Um, I feel like Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy IX both do a really good job with how the background music really informs the player of like what the emotions the characters are feeling, especially with Final Fantasy IX where they don't have the voice acting yet, obviously. So it's like you really rely on the music so much more to be able to tell like the feeling of like Freya with her whole character development of like her theme is so sad because her story is extremely sad. So it makes sense that her theme is so uh like melancholic even almost. And so yeah, I really feel like video game music just really helps like hit home the feelings that the developers want the players to have. So
Absolutely. And that's actually a perfect segue. So obviously you're a big Final Fantasy fan. We're big Final Fantasy fans, in case the name wasn't, enough of a hint there. But so with Final Fantasy, I think a lot of people, I definitely myself in this camp as well, consider it one of the leaders in making, I would say, not only memorable tracks, but really beautiful music for games. And obviously that's been a trend over the last, 20 plus years. So as a musician yourself, you did kind of allude to this just barely. What do you think the biggest thing is that sets, you know, Final Fantasy Square Enix apart with Final Fantasy music, maybe compared to other games?
I feel like Uematsu, to be honest, I haven't played as many of the newer Final Fantasy games. I am like a diehard, like, I really like 12, but really 10 back. I'm like a big diehard fan of like the older games in the series. So just for a point of reference for the listeners
Okay.
of where I'm coming from with stuff. But I feel like Uematsu is an absolute legend composer.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it just his music in general is so beautiful. Like even now when I have played some of the newer games or Final Fantasy X, for example, where he was like a contributing composer, but he wasn't like the main one. I feel like you can tell like, oh, Uematsu composed this track.
Yeah.
Or, it's just his composing style is so beautiful and unique that I feel like it has a lot of like almost like classical elements to it. Like I feel like the theme of love from Final Fantasy IV, for example, like I feel like that is something that could naturally fit into a more like traditional classical setting. And I don't think that the audience would realize like, oh, this is from a video game. Like it doesn't have the more like kiddish feel that like a Mario soundtrack might have, for example, where it's like it feels like, oh, this is for children, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love so many games that are like made for kids, trust me. But I feel like Final Fantasy, they did a really good job of elevating the music to the next level and really utilizing like the power that music can have in a video game. And I feel like the opera scene for Final Fantasy VI is like a great way they use music directly in the storytelling and also created like a super iconic scene that's still iconic now. Um, and yeah, I just feel like they just took it to the next level, and Uematsu is just a musical genius, in my opinion.
I'm 100% in agreement. You will not hear any debate from me. Uh, Dash coming in with our second to last question.
What was a video game soundtrack, if any, that you didn't vibe with at first, but it kind of eventually grew on you and became one of your favorites?
I feel like the soundtrack in Breath of the Wild slash Tears of the Kingdom, just because they have a lot of like overlapping tracks.
Mhm.
I feel like when I first played Breath of the Wild, I was like, I wasn't really feeling the music that much because it's a lot sparser than other Zelda soundtracks. But as like I started listening to the soundtrack more and I started making more covers and everything like that, so I was like re-listening to tracks and everything. I realized that I loved a lot more of the tracks than I thought I did because you spend so much time like in the open world map of Hyrule where it's like the music is a lot more sparse in the map. But like when you're in like Kakariko Village, um there that music is absolutely beautiful and just the depth of that piece is really special, but it's something you don't really notice because you're like running through, you're not spending maybe a ton of time in there. So that's something that as I started working on some covers of like Breath of the Wild music, I realized like, wait, this soundtrack actually has a lot more to it than I originally thought. Or even the music that plays in the different memory cutscenes, where it's like it's only played in that setting, so it's not like something you hear throughout the game. But as again, working on more covers and stuff and listening to more tracks just for the music, I'm not watching or anything, I'm just listening. I realized that, wait, I actually really like the music. And I think maybe the way they set the game up didn't really let the music shine as much as it could have. But it's definitely one that really grew on me a lot. And when I played Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like I appreciated the soundtrack a lot more from the beginning rather than with Breath of the Wild. It took some time for me to really pay attention to it.
I guess as an additional part to that, where would you put like Breath of the Wild in the overall Zelda series? Because it is kind of divisive in the fan base on where it is. So where
As
you
in
stand on,
timeline wise,
or
or
no, more
okay,
like just
okay, or just
like
ranking.
ranking kind of stuff.
Okay, okay. I honestly really liked Breath of the Wild. I will say that when it comes to like video game series where I'm like diehard, like ranking everything, Final Fantasy is more of that series for me rather than Legend of Zelda. Because Legend of Zelda I view as like I really like all of the games I've played from the series. I feel like, Link's Awakening has like a really amazing storyline, even though it may not be something you replay kind of thing. I feel like Breath of the Wild is kind of similar in that for me where it's like it's such a huge game, kind of the opposite of Link's Awakening where it's like a very short game, but Breath of the Wild is so huge and it's like after you played it once, like it does kind of lose that sparkle a little bit because it's like all the tricks, all like the shortcuts and everything like that. But I honestly have like a really fun time playing it, but and I do recommend it to people who maybe haven't played Legend of Zelda before. I think it's a really good introduction to like the younger generation of gamers into Legend of Zelda because it's more accessible for people who just are starting video games now. And but at the same time, there are also people who don't like open world games, period. One of my sisters is like that. She doesn't like open world games. She did not like Breath of the Wild, but she also didn't like Skyrim for the same reasons of just doesn't like open world games. So I feel like just the open world factor can be decisive for a lot of people. But I don't know. I feel like I enjoyed it. I won't replay it, but I definitely think it like has a specific spot in like the overall fandom and just like video game history.
I am one of the people who I think it's a good game. I don't love it, but I liked it. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, I don't regret playing it, but I again, just like you, I don't necessarily know that I'll play it again. Eric, coming in with our final question.
All right. I want a non-video game soundtrack that you think could overlay in either Final Fantasy or Zelda. You could pick which one, but we want to hear. Give me like Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore dropping bombs out there in Final Fantasy X. You just hear the March of the Urukai.
I honestly would have to say that he is like my favorite non-video game composer.
Hmm.
I am a
Uh,
big fan of the Lord of the Rings series,
yeah.
so
I listen to the Bridge of Khazad-dûm probably once a day on the way to work just to get hyped up in the mornings.
but honestly, video game soundtracks, I don't listen to many other like soundtracks. Like honestly, the only other music I listen to besides video game music is like emo grunge
Yeah.
music, which I don't think really
Yes.
fits a lot of video games.
Yes.
It fits with us, though, so
Yeah.
that's our
Yes.
My Spotify is like always on shuffle, and they'll be playing like the soundtrack from like say Cyberpunk, or it'll do the
Uh-huh.
Distant
Yeah.
Worlds in Final Fantasy. Then it'll be doing like some Baby Mel or something,
Yeah.
or and then it'll be like Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. So it's all over the place.
Oh my gosh. No, but I would definitely agree with Abby. Like I think it's hard to kind of bring one medium over to another. But I would say that I think that a lot of these video game soundtracks, you probably could like transition a lot of these because I mean, a lot of what we've talked about tonight is they are so good at evoking emotion and just portraying like a lot of things that I think are hard to put into words sometimes. Obviously, Final Fantasy X, it's my favorite game of all time. And there are just so many different scenes, and whether it's just, to Xanarkin and just a simple, piano melody at the very beginning, or, like Yuna's pilgrimage, there's a lot of obviously different things that just I think would translate well to almost any other medium because it is just so strong with that. Um, Abby, I want to say thank you. This has been so fun. We obviously have been laughing for the last like 10 15 minutes. I also wanted to give you a chance to shout. Like, we love to give our guests a chance to, is there any project or any really anything that you'd like to kind of bring attention to? Obviously, we'll make sure to go ahead and share your socials so that everybody can know where to follow you, but also wanted to give you a chance to kind of speak on something you're passionate about.
Yeah, so I feel like the biggest thing I have coming down the line of like a bigger project is, as I mentioned, I listen to like a lot of emo grunge music. Um, to any of my Midwest emo fans out there, I am featured on a track in Stars Hollow's next EP. So check them out on Spotify if you're not familiar with them. If you like the like math rock Midwest emo vibe, you will be obsessed. You will be obsessed. But yeah, I'm featured in their next EP coming out. I'm not sure if the release date has been announced yet, but I think it's some point in the next couple months. So if you've thought like I could never imagine oboe outside of like specific genres, just wait until the EP comes out. Your mind will be blown.
That is like the
Fantastic.
most interesting thing that I've ever heard. And I'm a diehard Yellow Card fan, so like violin in rock and roll is obviously, people were like, is this gonna work? It works. I'm trusting that oboe is gonna work here. So um perfect. Like I said, we'll definitely make sure to be sharing your socials because we want everybody to be able to follow you because like I said, Abby is absolutely crushing it. You do not want to miss her videos and her content here. With that, I think we're at a perfect spot to go ahead and close out here. So, Abby, again, thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. We will make sure to catch everybody next time. See you later, guys.
Have a good one.
Thank you.